What's going on YouTube? This is Tyler again from Fare From Scratch, and today we're going to be making pan pizza. Let's start out with the dough recipe. For two 10-inch pan pizzas, you're going to want 2 cups of bread flour, 1 cup of warm water, 1 packet of dry active yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and some olive oil. To begin, we're going to bloom our yeast in the sugar and warm water, let it rest for 5 minutes to make sure it's bubbly and alive, and then drizzle in a healthy glug of olive oil. Next, add your bread flour and salt, then grab a wooden spoon or rubber spatula to begin the mixing process. Obviously, if you have a stand mixer, that will make this process much easier. We are looking for a very wet dough that is also manageable to knead with your hands. I will usually end up adding almost another half a cup of flour little by little until I'm happy with the dough's consistency. I'm warning you all right now, if you plan on doing this by hand, you are going to get some sticky flour-coated fingers, and that is completely fine. You will eventually find a rhythm of scraping the dough from the bottom of the bowl and folding it into itself. This dough doesn't have to be perfect since we are going to let it sit in the fridge overnight, allowing the yeast and gluten to do most of the work for us. After the dough has come together nicely, we are going to take it out of the bowl with one hand, then pour a generous glug of olive oil on the bottom, and return our dough to the same mixing vessel while attempting to keep it in the shape of a ball. Lastly, we're going to cover this with plastic wrap and let it sit overnight in the fridge. As you can see, after 24 hours, the dough has more than doubled and is no longer as sticky and impossible to handle as it once was. Before we go preparing our pizzas, we're going to heat our oven to its highest setting, which in my case is 500 degrees. Next, we're going to portion out our dough. I did a 10-inch and 12-inch pie, so I cut a smaller portion out for the 10-inch pie. Then we're going to plop our dough into a cast iron pan, which I have seasoned with yet another healthy glug of olive oil, salt, pepper, and oregano. Thanks again Adam Ragusia for this tip, along with many others that helped me perfect this recipe. As you might be able to see, I got a little too excited here and forgot to stretch this dough over my hands before placing it into the pan. It ended up being fine, but it was much more difficult to stretch out than the 12-inch pie I shaped next. Once you get them as close as you can to the edge, we're going to let them proof for 30 minutes in the pan. This is also going to give us time to let the gluten relax, which will make the final stretch to the end much easier before we begin cooking. While we wait for the dough to proof, we can prepare our sauce, which in my case is just raw crushed tomatoes, garlic powder, salt, sugar, and oregano. Pre-made sauce works fine for this kind of recipe too. One of the most important components of this recipe is the cheese. You want low moisture, full fat mozzarella cheese, and no, you do not want to get the pre-shredded cheese that often comes coated in potato starch. Low moisture part skim will work too, but I find that it doesn't give you the same stretchy orange cheese that we all know and love. Now, in addition to your cheese, now is also the time to grab any toppings that you want. I'm doing 1 plain cheese pizza and 1 pepperoni. I also find that grating some fresh Parmesan cheese on about halfway through the cooking process gives you some really great flavor and color. Now fire up that stovetop to medium heat. The first part of the cooking process is developing a crust on the bottom of the pizza. I usually like to rotate the pan around the flame in order to keep things evenly cooked. Next, grab your sauce and make sure you spread it all the way to the end. This isn't a traditional pizza where we leave room for the crust. Our crust is going to come from the crispy, cheesy edges, and well, just trust me, you'll thank me later. Like I said earlier, we're going to keep rotating the pan on the heat. I like to wait for the sauce to begin bubbling on the edge as I move it around the burner. Now for potentially the most crucial step before we put this in the oven. Spread the cheese, again, all the way to the edge of the pan. The brown cheesy edges on this pie, it's by far the best part of this pizza. Be generous with it and don't put it on until right before you toss it in the oven. Putting cold cheese on right before will allow it to melt more evenly and not overcook. Keep a close watch on this while it cooks. Mine usually take about 10 minutes or so, but that can be different depending on your oven. This one is just about done, but I'm going to hit it with some Parmesan cheese before placing it back in the oven for about 1 to 2 minutes. And here it is. All of your time and effort now becomes worth it as you gaze upon heaven in a cast iron pan. As much as you want to reach in there and start eating with total disregard to the roof of your mouth, we're going to let this sit for just a few minutes before placing on a cooling rack. And for the pepperoni pie, we're going to do the exact same thing. Cook the bottom, spread the sauce all the way to the end, spread the cheese all the way to the end, top with your peps, and babysit that pie as it bathes in its orange pepperoni juices. While that cooks, we can cut up our cheese pie. Letting it sit on a cooling rack for about 5 minutes keeps the bottom crispy and prevents it from getting soggy. And I mean, just look at that. Is it not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? The cheese is stretchy, the bottom is a buttery, crispy wonderland, and honestly, I could eat this every day for the rest of my life, barring the potential health risks of doing so. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, have a wonderful day.